How to start review for a film that essentially leaves you dumbstruck? How can you say something about a story that conveys its meanings through silences, grasps of air, touches, gazes? How can you decipher something that is essentially untold?
Yes, and intangible almost. Barry Jenkins has crafted this film so masterfully that I can't help but feel awe at how perfectly all the elements work together. The screenplay, the art direction, the music, performances are all in such perfect harmony.
For God's sake, how did the storyteller manage to achieve such a brutally beautiful honesty rarely seen on the big screens? How did he avoid succumbing to stereotypes while essentially making film about a bunch of stereotypical situations? We have black violence, a dragged African-American mother, bullying, you name it.
All those stereotypes,
You name it.
exactly. And some films go and try hard to make a point, but I feel like Moonlight does not have to. It just tells a real story of many men, gay or straight, refracted through the life of Chiron, or Little and Black as he's also known.
Chiron is another African-American boy whose broken family and poor, violence-struck neighborhood creates that perfect frame for life with no future and no happy ending. His drug addict mother, Paula, Naomie Harris, is trying to survive as best as she can. She's a part-time hooker and sometimes a mother, but she makes sure that her only kid goes to school and his school uniform is immaculately clean. Chiron is daily bullied by his peers and called names, cruelly sneering at his sexuality. Chiron is not an effeminate kid that enjoys company of girls, a kid you would sadly expect to be picked on. Yes, he's quiet and odd, troubled, and sometimes very sad, but you wonder, how would his bullies know he's gay if he still doesn't?
That's right, I think it's a question of difference in masculinity. The film is written in such a way that the events of his life do not propel him in one direction or another, but rather conceal him and his truth behind layers of hurt and disillusionment. As a result, we are all desperate to see the vulnerable young man we all fell in love with. Has he gone forever, we ask ourselves? Is the real Chiron, whom we had such empathy for, still somewhere in the drug-dealing gangster with grills? I think this is the real plot. Not just whether Chiron becomes another statistic of social and political injustice, although that is part of the story as well, but whether his true nature has been thwarted by circumstance and events like many of those around him. It potentially reveals something good in our own natures by the end of the film.
Barry Jenkins broke his script into 3 separate pieces representing 3 different stages of his main character's life. These cinematic paragraphs do miss some important information, however they never come across episodic. Open-ended dialogue and often absence of it demands engaged audience ready to delve deep into its own identity struggles. Audience ready to continue where the writer decided to step out. Unlike others, Jenkins refuses to give you his answers. You will need to search for your own within yourself.
Barry Jenkins' direction is a creative coup d'etat. He has given independent art house film a retuning it needed. Everything works in perfect harmony here. From the performances he draws from his cast to the assembling of all the creative elements around them. And of course, it's not just a director's job to direct the actors, but the crew as well. Jenkins has taken a formerly niche cinematic form to create something that transcends labels and speaks to every audience.
And it speaks to everyone. I agree. Jenkins' direction is visionary. It feels fresh.
Yes.
It feels fresh. It achieves something that is unimaginable for most of them, for most of directors. It tells the story in a way it feels deeply human, almost naturalistic story that every one of us can relate to, at the same time remaining highly artistic and cinematic, which is essentially antithesis of life.
And the epitome of film, perhaps. Jenkins wants to make us see that Chiron's vulnerability and sensitivity was not weakness, nor is his being gay and loving men either. When Juan tells Little that faggot is a word used to make gay people feel bad, it cuts through the collective ambivalence people have towards such words. Not just in society generally, but by African American men who have been unscrupulously identified with a street culture that Hollywood has, appropriated and misrepresented, and oftentimes for box office gain. I didn't buy into any preconceived notions of how language is used and by whom in this film.
You wouldn't actually expect that the black drug dealer will use the word that way.
In that way.
And just to remind you, that was the first and last time we have discussion of this kind between Chiron and those surrounding him. It is the last time we actually hear Chiron addressing his own sexuality.
And now on to performances, Goran. What do you think of the performances?
Well, we will agree that Mahershala Ali performance was probably the best performance of the year. It was brilliant. But this film is achievement of the entire cast, of ensemble. It's like a mutual effort. All three Chirons are physically quite different, yes. And Jenkins even made sure they never met during the filming to avoid any sort of imitation, which is interesting. You won't see teenage Chiron nervously curling his hair as little Chiron did, but you will recognize him as soon as he looks at you. Shyness and reclusiveness is unmistakably Chiron's.
And that was deeply affecting. The only slightly discordant note for me was Naomie Harris, who I normally love, as Chiron's mum Paula. I felt she came on too strong at the beginning of the film. Her strong reaction to Mahershala Ali's one didn't feel quite authentic, although it may suggest that she had a real problem with Chiron's father, who was not in the picture. Trevante Rhodes as older Chiron was great. His body was his armour. He wore his grills because he knew they may inspire fear.
And those gold-plated grills were his only connection to his mentor, Juan.
Yes.
James Laxton's lyrical, bold cinematography made its biggest statement in the very first scene of the film. Camera spins around drug dealers, suggesting closed and inescapable circles of their own lives. Moonlight is a home for visually probably the best accomplished movie scene I have seen in a while. Juan takes little Chiron to the beach, willing to teach him how to swim. All of a sudden, this ordinary event turns into a sort of christening, mythical initiation into the world of adults, of men, where little Chiron is required to master one essential skill, to stay afloat no matter how hard life keeps pushing you down.
I think it also kind of alludes or references those kind of Southern Baptist rituals as well. The settings and the use of colour was across the spectrum, blues, pinks, yellows, reds, all emphasising the synergy of colour and the colour of our skins. Nobody is separate from the colour spectrum, whether you are black, white, red or yellow. We all reflect the light of the sun off our bodies, much like the moon does. And we can all provide light in the darkness, much like the moon does.
Word masterpiece was abused or overused lately. It's almost like teenage girls using literally all the time, But this is really a masterpiece. Go to cinema, watch this film with your open hearts. You will love it.
And if your hearts aren't open, this will be the film to pry them open. It is really that good.
Thank you.